I need to get something on record before this goes any further. My name is Kyle Brandt. I'm a backcountry patrol ranger with the National Park Service, stationed in the Thorofare district of Bridger-Teton National Forest, Wyoming. I've held this position for 8 years. Before that, I completed the Federal Law Enforcement Training Program at FLETC in Glencoe, Georgia, class of 2015. I'm telling you this because what I'm about to describe sounds like the kind of thing that comes from someone who doesn't understand the wilderness. Someone who got spooked by an elk carcass or a collapsed trapper's cabin and let their imagination fill in the rest. That's not what happened. On the night of September 14th, 2023, 3 independent incident reports were filed by 3 backcountry rangers operating in 3 separate patrol sectors of the Thorofare district. Each report described a stone foundation encountered during routine patrol. Each report included measurements. Each report included photographs. All 3 described the same structure. The locations were 11.4 miles, 17.2 miles, and 23.6 miles apart. I know because I filed one of them. The Thorofare is one of the most remote regions in the contiguous United States. The nearest road is roughly 30 miles from the district's interior. Resupply comes by mule train or, in emergencies, by helicopter out of Jackson. Cell service doesn't exist out there. Communication runs through a system of VHF repeaters mounted on ridgelines, and even those have dead zones that swallow transmissions whole. In September 2023, 3 rangers were assigned to backcountry patrol in preparation for the seasonal closure. Me operating out of the Hawk's Rest cabin, Marcus Hale out of the Bridger Lake Station, and Elena Vasquez working from the Trail Creek shelter. I need to say something about Marcus before any of this will make sense. Marcus had 12 years with the service. We went through FLETC together. He was in my wedding. My daughter calls him Uncle Mark. He once spent 16 hours in a January blizzard searching for a lost bow hunter near the Yellowstone headwaters, refused extraction twice, found the man hypothermic under a deadfall at 2 a.m., carried him 1.5 miles to the trailhead on an improvised litter made from ski poles and a tarp. He wasn't reckless. He wasn't superstitious. He didn't drink, didn't use, didn't even take ibuprofen unless he was in genuine pain. He was the most empirical person in my life. If Marcus Hale told me something impossible, I listened. That matters for what comes later. Elena was 3 years in, transferred from Glacier the previous spring. Sharp, methodical, the kind of ranger who recalibrated her GPS unit every morning, even when it didn't need it. She kept a field journal in the style they used to teach at the old Albright Training Center. Observations logged in 15-minute intervals. We were each covering roughly 80 square miles. You work alone. You carry a Motorola XTS 5000 portable, a sidearm, bear spray, a 15-day food cache, and a personal locator beacon. You check in by radio every 12 hours at 0600 and 1800 on Channel 3, the district tactical frequency. On September 14th, the 0600 check-in was routine. Weather was clear, high of 52 degrees Fahrenheit, wind southwest at 8 knots. Marcus reported a bull moose near the confluence of Thorofare Creek and the Yellowstone River. Elena reported fresh grizzly scat approximately 2 miles northeast of her shelter. I reported nothing of note. By the 1800 check-in, everything had changed. 2. I found it at 3:47 p.m. I was conducting a trail condition assessment along a section of the Thorofare Trail between Hawk's Rest and the south boundary of Yellowstone, roughly 2 miles north of my cabin. The trail follows the eastern bank of the Yellowstone River through subalpine meadow open terrain, good sightlines, the kind of landscape where you can see weather coming from 40 miles out. I came around a shallow bend in the trail and it was just there. A stone foundation, rectangular, set into a slight depression in the meadow roughly 15 yards east of the trail. My first thought was that it was a historical remnant, an old trapping outpost or survey camp. The Thorofare has a deep human history. Mountain men, army surveyors, early Park Service structures. But I've walked that section of trail at least 200 times over 8 years. There is no foundation there. There has never been a foundation there. I approached and conducted a visual assessment. The foundation was constructed of locally sourced granite, rough-hewn, fitted without mortar. The joints were tight, better masonry than most of the historical structures I've encountered in the backcountry. The walls stood approximately 18 inches above grade on three sides. On the eastern face, the wall height dropped to roughly 4 inches, forming what appeared to be a doorway or threshold. I measured it, 12 feet by 16 feet, exterior dimensions. Wall thickness consistent at approximately 10 inches. I took 11 photographs with my service-issued Nikon D780 with GPS geotagging. I recorded the coordinates 44.0312 degrees north, 110.1147 degrees west. I noted the time, the light conditions, the ambient temperature. I noted that the grass inside the foundation was shorter than the grass outside, not mowed or trampled, but shorter, as if it had been growing for less time. Then something small happened that I almost didn't write down. I was crouching beside the east threshold, photographing the stone joints, when every sound stopped. Not faded. Stopped. No river noise, and the Yellowstone was 80 yards to my left, running strong. No wind through the sage, no insects. The silence lasted approximately 6 seconds, and during those 6 seconds, my compass needle swung 40 degrees east and held there. Then everything came back. River, wind, a raven somewhere behind me. The compass returned to normal. I checked my watch. It had lost 4 minutes. I noted it in my report as an equipment anomaly. I noted one more thing before I left. The air inside the foundation smelled different. Mineral. Cold. Like the air that comes up from a limestone cave, except there is no limestone in that drainage. I hiked back to Hawk's Rest and filed incident report 2023-TH-0914-07 at 5:30 p.m. At the 1800 check-in, I reported the finding. Marcus acknowledged. Elena acknowledged. Neither mentioned anything unusual on their end. It wasn't until 3 days later, when I rode the mule train to the Thorofare ranger station for resupply, that I saw their reports. 3. The station keeps hard copies of all incident reports in a binder behind the duty desk. I was logging my resupply manifest when I pulled the binder to file my carbon copy and saw 2 other reports from September 14th. Marcus's was filed at 6:15 p.m. Incident report 2023-TH-0914-08. He described a stone foundation he encountered at approximately 4:20 p.m. near the headwaters of Atlantic Creek, roughly 17 miles southeast of my location. Rectangular, granite, fitted without mortar, eastern-facing threshold. 12 by 16 feet. I read it twice. Then I read Elena's. Hers was filed at 7:40 p.m. Incident report 2023-TH-0914-09. She'd found her foundation at 5:05 p.m. along a game trail above the upper Yellowstone Meadows, over 23 miles northwest of Marcus, over 11 miles northwest of me. The dimensions matched, the materials matched, the orientation matched. 3 completely different landscapes, heavy timber, high-altitude sage, riparian meadow, and the same structure sitting in each one. I radioed Marcus that evening from the station's base unit. What I remember most about that conversation is how calm he was. Too calm. Marcus is the kind of person who once spent 20 minutes on the radio describing a set of Wolverine tracks. But when I told him about the 3 matching reports, his response was 4 words. Yeah, I figured. I asked him what that meant. He said, I went back to it this morning, Kyle, before dawn. I wanted to see it in different light. And it's the same, exactly the same. I counted the stones on the south wall, 47. You should count yours. I hadn't counted mine. The thought hadn't occurred to me. But I understood immediately why it mattered. If all 3 foundations had the same number of stones on the same wall, this wasn't a coincidence of design. This was a single thing expressing itself in 3 locations simultaneously. I told Marcus I'd check. He said he'd wait for my report. Then he said something that I've thought about every day since. Don't bring Meg and Lily out here this fall. Just don't. He signed off before I could ask why. 4. I rode back to Hawk's Rest the next morning, September 18th. Arrived at 11:40 a.m. Stowed my gear, ate half a sandwich, and hiked to the foundation site. It was still there, unchanged. I knelt beside the south wall and counted the stones. I counted them 3 times because the first 2 counts made no sense and I wanted to be certain. 47. I radioed Elena. She was already at her site. She'd heard my conversation with Marcus over the open channel and she'd gone to count before I asked. 47, she said. All 3 walls excluding the threshold. The stones are nearly identical in size. Too identical. I measured a sample, the variation between them is less than half an inch. These weren't quarried and fitted by different hands. They were made to specification. That's Elena. She doesn't just observe, she quantifies. There's something else, she said. I took a soil core inside the foundation. The soil below the grass layer is wrong. Dense clay, high mineral content, nothing like the native substrate. Kyle, this soil doesn't belong here. It's not from anywhere within 40 miles of my location. I asked if she'd reported it. I already called the district office in Jackson. They said they'd send someone when staffing allows. Staffing never allowed. We were 3 weeks from seasonal closure. Every available body was doing trail decommission and bare box removal. 3 stone foundations weren't a priority. That was when I should have pushed harder. I know that now. V. Over the next 4 days, I documented everything I could about my foundation site. I returned twice daily, photographed it from every angle, drove survey flags at each corner to monitor for movement, recorded the ambient temperature inside the foundation and outside at matched times. The temperature inside was consistently lower, the same amount, every measurement. Dawn, midday, dusk, the differential never varied, not approximately, exactly. Like the air inside the foundation was being regulated, I also noticed the wildlife. Hawk's Rest sits in prime habitat, elk daily, mule deer, coyotes at night, ravens constantly, but within roughly 100 yards of the foundation, nothing. No tracks, no scat, no browse marks, no bird calls. I set a trail camera on a tree 40 yards out and ran it for 72 hours. 216 images triggered by the motion sensor. Every single one showed the foundation. No animals, no insects crossing the sensor beam, just the structure in varying light. Except the last image, captured at 3:12 a.m. on September 21st. In that image, the shadow geometry is wrong. The moon was bearing southwest. The shadows should have fallen northeast. In the image, the shadows fall inward toward the center of the foundation. All 4 walls casting shadows toward the middle, regardless of the light source. I checked the camera twice. It hadn't moved. The GPS stamp was correct. The timestamp was correct. The shadows were impossible. I pulled the camera that morning and didn't replace it. 6. September 22nd. That's when Marcus started to change. We had our 0600 check-in as normal. Elena reported clear. I reported my findings from the trail camera. Marcus listened without comment. Then he said, I went inside it last night. There was a silence on the channel. Going inside a stone foundation that's 18 inches tall isn't physically significant. You step over the wall. But the way he said it carried weight, like he was describing entering a room. Inside the foundation? I asked. I sat in the middle, on the ground, just to see what it felt like. What did it feel like? Another silence. 8 seconds. I counted. Finished, he said. I asked him to clarify. It felt finished, like the rest of the building was there. I couldn't see walls, I couldn't see a roof, but I could feel where they would be. If I closed my eyes, I could feel the dimensions of a room around me. Kyle, there's a second floor. I could feel weight above me. Elena cut in. Her voice was flat and professional, but I'd worked with her long enough to hear the tension underneath. Marcus, I need you to clarify. Are you saying you experienced a perceptual anomaly while seated inside the structure? I'm saying there's a building there, Elena. We're only seeing the foundation because the rest of it isn't here yet. That word? Yet. Over the next 2 days, Marcus went back every night. Each morning at the 0600 check-in, he reported what he'd seen. Night 1, September 22nd. The first floor walls reached full height. He could feel the lintels above the windows, the header over the doorway. He described reaching up and touching air that felt like stone. Night 2. September 23rd. The joists went in. He heard them, the deep structural sound of heavy timber seating into notches. Then the second floor materialized beneath his perception. He could feel the weight of an upper story pressing down on the walls around him. He said the staircase in the northeast corner had become solid enough that he could place his hand on the newel post and feel wood grain under his fingers. There was no newel post. I need to be clear about that. There was nothing there. But he described the grain pattern, quarter sawn oak, tight rings, old growth. Night 3, September 24th, the hearth. He said the fireplace on the west wall was complete. He could smell soot. He could feel radiant heat from a fire that wasn't burning. And for the first time, he described the windows. 2 on the south wall, 1 on the north, 1 flanking the east doorway. Through the upstairs windows, he said, the view wasn't the Thorofare. It was a landscape he didn't recognize, open ground, no trees, and a sky that was the wrong color. Not night, not day, gray-green, like the light before a tornado, but constant and still. He said one more thing on the morning of the 24th. There's someone on the 2nd floor. I can hear them walking. The floorboards creak above me in a pattern, back and forth, like they're waiting. I requested an in-person meet. All 3 of us at the Thorofare ranger station. Marcus agreed. We'd bring all our documentation. Marcus didn't show up. 7. Elena and I arrived at the station within an hour of each other on the 24th. We waited until noon. Marcus didn't respond to radio calls. His personal locator beacon was transmitting from his cabin at Bridger Lake. He was there. He was just not answering. Elena and I compared documentation. We spread everything on the station's map table. 3 sets of photographs, soil samples, my trail camera images, his incident report with its 4-word margin note that I hadn't noticed before. In the margin of his original report, in pencil, Marcus had written, "Already knew." Elena pulled a USGS topographic quadrangle from the map cabinet, the 2 Ocean Pass quad, covering all 3 patrol sectors. She'd marked our 3 GPS coordinates with red dots and placed a ruler between them. They're not random, she said. The 3 points form an isosceles triangle. Your site is the apex pointing due south. The base runs east-west between my site and Marcus's. She paused. If you calculate the centroid, the geometric center, it falls at 44.0847 degrees north, 110.0639 degrees west. Open meadow at about 8,400 feet. I checked the 1935, 1968, and 1991 editions of this quad. That point has never had anything on it. She looked at me. But if the 3 foundations are the base of something larger, that point is where the apex would sit. 8. We decided to check on Marcus in person. Elena and I left the station at first light on September 25th, 13 miles. We arrived at his cabin at 3:40 p.m. Marcus was outside, sitting on the porch step. He was sketching in a field notebook. His radio was on the step beside him, powered off. His pack was staged by the door, fully loaded. He looked up when we came into the clearing, and he smiled. An ordinary smile. That was worse than anything else because it was genuine. I was going to come, he said, but I needed to get this down first. He held up the notebook. He'd been drawing floor plans, not of the foundation, of a complete building. 2 stories, a basement with a root cellar, a pitched roof with a cross gable, interior walls dividing the upper floor into 3 rooms, a staircase in the northeast corner, a stone hearth centered on the west wall. The floor plans had the quality of something remembered, not imagined. The lines were confident, no erasure marks, no hesitation. I asked him where the plans came from. I told you, he said. It's already there. The building is already there. We just can't see all of it yet. I asked him how he knew the interior layout. Every night since the 20th, I sit inside the foundation and close my eyes and the building assembles around me, stone by stone. It takes about 2 hours for the walls to reach full height. Then the joists, then the upper floor, then the upper walls. Last night the windows were complete. Tonight I think the roof goes on. It builds from the bottom up, like it's remembering how to be a building. He closed the notebook. I need to show you something else. He turned to the last page. This is the view from the east threshold, the doorway. When the building is complete, this is what you see when you stand in the doorway and look out. He turned the notebook toward us. It was a drawing of a house, a modern house, raised ranch, covered front porch, detached single-car garage on the left, a tire swing in the yard hanging from an old cottonwood. It was my house, in Jackson, where Meg and Lily live. The detail was flawless, the angle of the porch roof, The crack in the garage window that I'd been meaning to fix since spring, Lily's bicycle leaning against the front step. "Marcus," I said, and my voice sounded wrong in my own ears. "Have you been to my house recently? I haven't been to Jackson since July." "Then how?" "It's what the building sees, Kyle. When it faces east, it sees your house." He turned to another page, one I hadn't asked about. He'd drawn Lily's bedroom. The view was from the doorway, the angle you'd see if you were standing in the hall looking in. The bed against the right wall, the bookshelf with the stuffed animals, the crescent moon nightlight plugged into the outlet beside the pillow. On the bed, he'd drawn a small stuffed rabbit, grey, with one ear longer than the other. Meg had bought that rabbit 3 days ago, September 22nd, at the toy store on the square in Jackson. Marcus was 60 miles into the backcountry. There is no way he knew about the rabbit. I looked at that drawing for a long time, and I felt the ground shift under me, not physically, but the kind of shift where you understand that the rules you've built your life on are not the only rules operating. 9. We stayed at Marcus's cabin that night. I barely slept. Elena didn't sleep at all. I could see the glow of her headlamp through the wall of her tent until dawn. She was writing, her mind's way of maintaining control. At 2:15 a.m., I heard something. I was lying in my sleeping bag on the cabin's porch, watching the stars through the trees, when I heard it. A rhythmic, heavy sound, muffled by distance, stone on stone, a deliberate, measured cadence, like a metronome set to an impossibly slow tempo. One impact every 4 to 5 seconds. Consistent, patient, the sound of masonry. I sat up. The sound was coming from the northeast, from the direction of Marcus's foundation site, roughly 2 miles away. It carried through the still night air with unnatural clarity, as if the forest were conducting it. I reached for my headlamp and then stopped, because inside the cabin, Marcus was talking in his sleep. He was counting. 48, 49, 50. Each number coinciding precisely with a sound from the northeast. I stayed on the porch until dawn. The counting stopped at 112. The sound stopped with it. Marcus emerged at 0600, rested calm, and told me he'd slept well. He looked at me and said, "The roof is on." Elena came to the porch with her coffee and her journal. She asked Marcus a single question. The centroid of the triangle formed by our 3 sites, 44.0847 degrees north, 110.0639 degrees west. Have you been there? Marcus looked at her for a long time. Then he said, "That's where the basement stairs come out." X, I need to explain what happened next in terms of decisions, not events. Because the events were strange, and I could describe them, and you would find them disturbing. But the decisions are what mattered. The decisions are what I live with. Elena wanted to hike to the Centroid point. She wanted to see what was there. Her reasoning was clinical. If the 3 foundations formed a geometric pattern with a calculable center, then the center should exhibit measurable properties. She wanted data. Marcus wanted to go back to his foundation. He was ready to leave immediately. He had his pack staged. He'd been planning this before we arrived, and I had to decide. If I let Marcus go alone, he would sit inside that foundation again. He would close his eyes. The building was complete now, said the roof was on. I didn't know what happened when a building that exists only in perception becomes whole. I didn't want to find out with Marcus inside it. If I went with Elena, I might learn something useful. Something that could help me stop what was happening. Or I could activate my PLB, call for an emergency extraction, and get all 3 of us out of the backcountry. Write it up as a mental health incident. Marcus would be evaluated. I would be the ranger who pulled the alarm over a pile of rocks. And the foundations would still be there. I chose to go with Marcus, not to his foundation, to mine. I told him I wanted to show him something at my site, the trail camera images, the shadow anomaly. It was true. But the real reason was simpler and harder to say out loud. Marcus was my friend. He was my daughter's godfather. And he was being taken from me in increments, not by a disease, not by an accident, but by a building that didn't exist yet. Each night he went back, he came away with more of the building inside him and less of himself. I wasn't going to let him go back alone. Elena went to the Centroid point. We agreed on a radio check at 1400. 11. Marcus and I reached my foundation site at Hawk's Rest by early afternoon. I watched him as we approached. He walked toward it the way you walk toward a place you know, not searching for it, not surprised by it. His feet found the trail through the meadow grass as if he'd walked it 100 times. He stepped over the south wall and stood inside the foundation. He didn't close his eyes. He just stood there, turning slowly, looking at things I couldn't see. "This one's the same," he said. "Exactly the same. The hearth goes here." He pointed at the west wall. "The stairs go here." He pointed at the northeast corner. "Marcus, no one built this." "Someone built it, Kyle. It's just not finished yet." I asked him what happens when it finishes. He looked at me and the calm cracked. Just for a moment. Something underneath it, something that looked like grief, surfaced and then submerged. "I don't think I leave," he said. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I think when the building is finished, I'm inside it. I think I'm one of the rooms." The radio broke the silence. "Elena, right on schedule." But her voice was different, tight, controlled in a way that told me the control was costing her something. "I'm at the Centroid point," she said, "confirmed by GPS. There's nothing here visually. Open meadow, undisturbed, no foundation, no structure." Relief hit me like a physical weight. "Copy that. Nothing there." "I didn't say there was nothing," Elena said. "I said there's nothing I can see. My compass is reading wrong. The declination is off by 11 degrees. My GPS says I'm at 6,200 feet, but the map puts this location at 8,400. And Kyle, the grass here is short, like the grass inside the foundations, but the area is a perfect circle, roughly 40 feet in diameter." She paused. "There's more. I'm standing at what I believe is the center of the circle, and the ground is vibrating. Not seismically, I felt tremors. This isn't that. It's rhythmic. A pulse every 4 to 5 seconds. And between the pulses I can hear something below me, faint, muffled. It sounds like knocking, like someone striking stone against stone, underground." Marcus, standing inside my foundation, spoke without keying his radio. Just said it aloud, knowing I was close enough to hear. "The basement," Elena continued. "I'm going to take measurements and leave." "But Kyle, the perimeter of the circle. I marked it with a cairn when I arrived. I just checked. It's closer. The circle has contracted by roughly 3 feet in the last 90 minutes. She paused again, and when she spoke next, I heard something in her voice I'd never heard from Elena Vasquez before. Fear. "Whatever this is the footprint of, it's not going outward. It's going down, and it's pulling the surface with it." 12. I made my decision at 4 p.m. on September 25th, 2023. I told Marcus we were leaving, all 3 of us, that night. I was going to activate my PLB, request helicopter extraction at first light, and we were walking to the Thorofare ranger station to wait for it, together. He said no. He said it quietly, the way you say no to something you've already thought about for a long time. Not defiance. Resignation. He said the building needed him. He said it was complete now, the roof, the windows, the hearth. He said the only thing left was for the door to close. He said he needed to be inside when it closed. "Marcus, listen to what you're saying. I know what I'm saying. You're talking about a hallucination that you've had inside an unexplained stone formation in the middle of the Wyoming wilderness. You need a psych eval. You need to be out of the field. And you need to go home to your wife and daughter and not come back here. I'm not leaving without you." He looked at me then with an expression I'd never seen on his face. Not in 12 years. Not through FLETC. Not through the search and rescue calls where we'd pulled bodies out of rivers. Not through any of it. He looked at me like he was already gone and was sorry about it. "Kyle, the building looks at your house. I don't know why. I don't know what it means. But every night I sit inside it, the view from the doorway gets clearer. Last night, I could see the light in Lily's room. The night light. The toy on her bed. Things I've never seen. Things I shouldn't know. Whatever this building is, it's not just pointing at your family. It's watching them. And every night I sit inside it, the watching gets closer." I grabbed Marcus by the arm. He didn't resist, but he didn't move either. He was heavier than he should have been, not physically larger, but rooted, like the ground under his boots had a claim on him. "We're going," I said. "I don't think I can." I pulled him. I physically hauled my best friend out of that foundation, over the south wall, stumbling, his boots dragging through the meadow grass. He didn't fight me. He let himself be moved. but his eyes stayed on the foundation the entire time, and he was counting under his breath. His right foot caught a survey flag I'd driven into the corner post. He went down hard, shoulder first into the granite wall. I heard the impact, his head striking the top course of stone, a wet, final sound. He was unconscious before he hit the ground. I checked his pulse, his breathing, his pupils. Steady, regular. Right pupil slightly dilated but responsive. A laceration above his right ear, bleeding freely but not deep. I carried him. Fireman's carry across both shoulders, his pack abandoned beside the foundation, 1.5 miles back to Hawk's Rest. I laid him on the cabin bunk and dressed the wound and activated my personal locator beacon full distress activation, code for medical evacuation. Then I radioed Elena. I told her what happened. I told her to get to the station. Her response was 7 words, and the flatness of her delivery told me everything about what she'd found at the Centroid point in the hours since her last check-in. "I'm already walking. I'll explain later." She never did explain, not fully. When I asked her at the station, she said, "The circle was smaller when I left than when I arrived. 40 feet when I got there, 34 3 hours later, contracting at roughly 11 inches per hour." She paused. "And the knocking was louder when I left, not closer louder. Like whatever was making it had reached a harder layer and was having to work. And Kyle, just before I left, I looked down at the center of the circle. The grass was gone, bare soil, and the soil was arranged in a shape, a rectangle, faint, like the outline of a trapdoor." She didn't go back. 13. The helicopter arrived at 07:45 on September 26th. A Bell 407 out of Jackson Hole Airport. Marcus was conscious by then. He'd woken around midnight, alert, oriented to person and place and time. He knew his name, my name, where he was. He knew the date. He didn't remember the foundation. Didn't want to talk about it. Didn't remember it. I showed him his own incident report. He read it like he was reading someone else's handwriting. I showed him the notebook, the floor plans, the drawings, my house, Lily's nightlight, the rabbit. He looked at each page and then looked at me with an expression I can only describe as invaded. Like someone had been inside his mind without his permission and left evidence of the trespass. "I don't remember drawing any of this," he said. "Do you remember going inside the foundation?" "What foundation?" "The medics evaluated him en route. Concussion, grade 2, with possible retrograde amnesia, localized to the preceding 10 to 12 days. They told me memory loss of this scope wasn't typical for the severity of his injury, but wasn't unheard of. They told me the memories might return, or they might not. I didn't tell them about the building. I didn't tell them about the nightlight. I watched the Thorofare fall away beneath the helicopter, and I said nothing. 14. I returned to the backcountry one more time. October 3rd, 2023. Against Elena's recommendation, against Meg's explicit request, against every instinct I had. I needed to see. I hiked to my foundation site at Hawk's Rest. The meadow was exactly as I'd left it, survey flag still in place, trail camera mount still wired to the tree, Marcus's pack where I'd left it beside the south wall. The foundation was lower. The walls had lost 4 inches of height. The top course of stone was now flush with the surrounding grade on 2 sides. The ground was growing up and over it, or the foundation was sinking. Inside, the soil level had dropped. The floor was at least 6 inches below the meadow surface, maybe 8. And at the northeast corner, where Marcus had said the stairs would go, the soil was disturbed. Loose, dark, as if something had been digging from underneath. I stood at the east threshold, and I listened. At first there was nothing, just the river and the wind and a Stella's jay somewhere in the timber. Normal sounds, the Thorofare doing what the Thorofare does. Then, under the normal sounds, I heard it, stone on stone, faint. Not from the northeast this time, from below, from directly beneath the foundation. The same cadence, 1 strike every 4 to 5 seconds. Patient, deliberate, and between the strikes, barely audible, something else. Counting. A voice, or something shaped like a voice. Counting. Muffled by soil and stone and whatever distance separates the surface from wherever the sound was coming from. I couldn't make out the numbers, but the rhythm matched what I'd heard from Marcus's cabin. The same tempo, the same patience. Except Marcus was in a hospital bed in Jackson, 80 miles away, remembering nothing. Whatever was counting, it wasn't Marcus, or it wasn't only Marcus. I did not step inside. I collected his pack. I pulled my survey flags. I removed the camera mount. I documented the current state and filed the photographs with the district office. Then I drove home to Jackson. It was dark when I arrived. Meg was asleep. I checked on Lily. She was asleep in her bed, the crescent moon nightlight glowing in the outlet beside her pillow, the grey rabbit with the uneven ears tucked under her arm. I stood in her doorway for a long time, remembering Marcus's drawings, the ones he said he didn't remember making. Every detail was accurate. I closed Lily's door and sat in the kitchen until morning. 15. Here's what happened after. Marcus resigned from the Park Service in November 2023. He moved to Denver, took a job with an engineering firm, downtown office, glass and steel, nothing older than 2015. He told me the quiet was the problem, not the wilderness quiet that he'd always loved. A different kind of quiet. A listening quiet. He said it felt like the silence in the backcountry had changed shape, like it was paying attention to him specifically. In the city, the noise was enough to drown it out. We still talk, not as often. He's functional, he's okay, but he's not the same person. There's a distance in him now, not emotional distance, spatial. Like part of him stayed behind in a building that doesn't exist, in a room he can't remember entering. Elena transferred to a desk position at the regional office in Lakewood, Colorado. GIS analysis, satellite imagery. She told me in February 2024 that she'd pulled high-resolution commercial satellite imagery for the Thorofare district, captured the previous August. She found soil discolorations at all 3 foundation sites. Rectangular. The dimensions matched. She also found a 4th one, at the Centroid point, the same coordinates where she'd stood in the contracting circle of short grass. In the satellite image, the discoloration was circular, roughly 26 feet in diameter, smaller than when she'd measured it on the ground, still shrinking, still sinking. She said she wouldn't check again. 16. I still work the Thorofare. I requested reassignment and was denied staffing. So I walk the same trails. I patrol the same drainages. I file the same reports. I don't go to the foundation site. I route my patrols around it. A 2-mile detour on a trail I've walked for a decade because I will not cross that section of meadow again. But here's the part I need to get on record. The part that made me write this. Last month, May 2024, Lily's kindergarten class did an art project. Draw your dream house. The teacher sent the pictures home in the Friday folder. Lily's drawing showed a house, rectangular, 2 stories, a stone chimney centered on the left wall, a door facing right, a set of stairs visible through a window on the upper floor. I looked at it for a long time. Meg asked me if I liked it. I told her it was great. I put it on the refrigerator. That night, after Meg went to bed, I took it down. I laid it on the kitchen table next to Marcus's notebook, the one he'd left in his pack, the one he said he didn't remember. I opened the notebook to the floor plan page. Lily's drawing wasn't a child's approximation of a house. It was an elevation view of Marcus's floor plan. The proportions were correct. The chimney placement matched the hearth location. The staircase was in the northeast corner. The door faced east. But she'd drawn things Marcus hadn't. Things Marcus never described, even at his most consumed. Below the foundation line, she'd drawn a set of stairs going down, into the ground. 7 steps, I counted them, leading to a circular room. Marcus's floor plans had a basement. They did not have a circular room. Marcus never mentioned a circular room. Neither did Elena. And she'd stood above the circular footprint at the Centroid point. Inside the circular room, Lily had drawn a door. Not a doorway, a door. Closed. With a handle. And on the other side of the door, she'd drawn a figure. Simple the way 5-year-olds draw people. A circle for a head, lines for arms. But this figure was different from the stick figure family she'd drawn standing in front of the house. This one was larger. It filled the space behind the door, and its arms weren't at its sides. They were reaching for the handle. I counted the stones she'd drawn on the front wall of the house. 47. My 5-year-old daughter drew 47 stones on the front wall of a building she has never seen, in a place she has never been, matching a count she has never been told. She drew a basement Marcus knew about, a circular room nobody knew about, and a door with something behind it that is trying to get out. Marcus sat inside the building and saw outward. He saw my house. he saw my family, Lily, from 60 miles away. Without ever touching the foundation, without ever closing her eyes inside it, she saw inward. Deeper than Marcus ever went, deeper than anyone has gone. And she saw something down there that knows about the door. I don't know what is being built in the Thorofare. I don't know why there are 3 foundations, or what occupies the space below the Centroid point, or why the structure's east-facing doorway looks out at my home. I don't know why Marcus could feel a building that doesn't exist, or why Elena's circle was shrinking, or why my daughter can see further into it than any of us. I know the foundations are sinking, slowly, settling into the earth like they're being reclaimed, or like the visible portion was never the point. Like what we found on the surface was scaffolding, and the real structure has always been below. I know that the building is not finished. Last week, I checked the seasonal weather station data for the Hawk's Rest drainage. Temperature logs from the automated sensor nearest my old foundation site. Every night between 2 and 4 a.m., the ambient temperature drops. The same amount. Every night. Even in May. Even after snowmelt. Like something under the meadow is still breathing. I'm requesting a transfer to the southwest region. I've applied for a position at Carlsbad Caverns, Big Bend, anywhere more than 1,000 miles from the Thorofare. Meg thinks it's about work-life balance. About Lily starting school in the fall. About wanting to be closer to a hospital and a grocery store and a world that makes sense. She's not wrong. She's just not completely right. I haven't told her about the drawing. I haven't told her about any of it. And I know that's its own kind of wrong, keeping this from the person I share a life with. Letting her believe our daughter drew an ordinary house on an ordinary day in an ordinary classroom. But I don't know what telling her would accomplish. I don't have an explanation. I don't have a solution. I have 3 incident reports, a notebook full of floor plans drawn by a man who doesn't remember drawing them, a trail camera image with impossible shadows, and a kindergarten drawing that goes deeper than anything we found in the field. The foundations were never the beginning. They were the part we were allowed to see. Whatever is being built beneath the Thorofare, it isn't building upward anymore. It's building toward us. Incident reports 2023-TH-0914-07, 2023-TH-0914-08, and 2023-TH-0914-09 remain on file at the Thorofare Ranger Station, Bridger-Teton National Forest, Wyoming. No follow-up investigation has been initiated. Ranger Hale's personnel file lists his separation as voluntary. Ranger Vasquez's transfer was processed without review. The foundation sites have not been resurveyed. The next seasonal patrol of the Hawk's Rest drainage is scheduled for June 2024. The position has not yet been filled.